Hey guys, this is JAde from Dallas Jamming. Today we're going to be looking at some tips that will help you in choosing your first synthesizer. If you've recently embarked on the exciting journey of making music with hardware instruments, you might be feeling a little overwhelmed with so many options at your disposal. Going from thousands of VSTs that were all controlled with a single keyboard to a world where each piece has its own individual purpose can be confusing. Here are a few things to keep in mind when choosing your first synthesizer. Budget. Jumping in headfirst into a new hobby without knowing if it's for sure where you want your hard-earned money to go is a bad idea. Going in with a plan will prevent you from getting sidetracked and stop you from wasting hours of your life drooling over synths that you can't afford. Spending more than you have will cost you stress in the long run, so knowing from the get-go how much you want to spend on your first piece of gear will help you narrow things down quite a bit. You don't want to find yourself in a situation where you've spent too much money on your first synthesizer and it has left you with no money to add anything else to your setup. Ins and outs. Something else to keep in mind is in what direction you want your studio to go in after obtaining your first piece of gear. Are you planning on adding more gear? Of course you are. You don't want your synth to get lonely. It's not a matter of when, but a matter of preparation. When choosing your first synthesizer, you want to think about things like, does it have MIDI in, out, through? Does it have audio in? Is it battery powered? I'm not suggesting that you need these functionalities to make music, but you do want to think about the future and how each of these things will affect your future jamming area. To keyboard or not to keyboard. Some companies give you the option to get the same synthesizer without a keyboard for less. These are called desktop modules. A keyboard version of a synth isn't necessarily better. It all depends on your needs. Modules are good for people who don't have much studio space or who like to travel light. Modules usually have less knobs than the keyboard version, which sometimes can result in more menu diving, but isn't always the case. Besides that, they're identical to each other. Mono or poly? First, let's talk about the difference between the two. Monophonic means that it can only play one note at a time. Polyphonic means that it can play more than one note at a time, making it more in resemblance to what we find when we walk into a music store. If you consider yourself a decent piano player, getting a mono synth as your first synthesizer might make you feel a bit limited. It's a lot more expensive to get a polyphonic analog synth than it is to get a digital one. It's hard to appreciate a monophonic synth when you know nothing else. So if you don't consider yourself a piano player but more of a knob twiddler, a monophonic synthesizer might be a good start for you. I do believe having one good monophonic synthesizer is essential in the long run, but it's up to you if you want it to be your first synth. Analog versus digital. An analog synthesizer is one who uses analog signals and analog circuitry to generate sound. This results in beautiful sound waves that you've probably never experienced before. I myself feel a bit unworthy in the presence of an analog synth. The sounds they produce are beautiful and nothing else can come close to it. A digital synthesizer is one which plays back acoustic or electronic recordings using digital signal processing. So a digital synth would be able to easily recreate familiar sounds like guitar, piano, violin, etc. The fight over analog versus digital is never ending. With analog purists spending thousands on monophonic synths, it might make you feel daunted and give you a false sense that you need to spend thousands to make good music. There's things that digital synths can't do and vice versa. I'm a keyboard player, so I really enjoy my digital synths. I believe there's a place for everything. Built-in effects. A lot of affordable entry-level synths have at least one built-in effect, maybe delay, reverb, distortion, etc. Effects are great at enhancing your sound and can really add atmosphere to your music. Adding an effects pedal to your synth can transform its sound in a magical way. Getting a synth with a built-in effects is smart because it's a cheap way to get your feet wet. Hardware effects can range from $50 to $500, so it's wise to take advantage of a synth with built-in effects. What is multi-timbral? Multi-timbral means that this synth is capable of playing different sounds on different MIDI channels, resulting in a synthesizer that can create a lead on one channel, a bass line on another, and effects on another, and so on. This is useful when using a standalone sequencer that can handle sequencing multiple channels. Apart from being able to play different sounds on different channels, you can also stack up the sounds, playing different sounds on top of each other with a single key press. I hope these tips were beneficial in helping you choose your first synthesizer. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more.